I just want to welcome everybody to Fireside Chants. It's a concert experience that I do from my home. Been doing it for about 2 years, ever since COVID broke out. Actually, the first one was in March. So I just want to take this off my screen for a second. There we go. It was in March of 2020, actually. So gotta warm myself up a little bit because it is quite cold here in Michigan. Tonight, this is the 13th installment of Fireside Chants, I want to explore a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, and I call it the evolution of the American Jewish folk singer. Why do I call it this? Well, I'm going to be explaining that as we begin this evening, but I want to sing something, and you can sing along with. Obviously, I won't hear you, but you will hear 3 different versions of Havanashira. Let's all sing. This is the traditional one. Havanashira, shir hallelujah. Havanashira, shir hallelujah. Havana Shira, Shir Hallelujah. Havana Shira, Shir Hallelujah. Rob Aronson wrote this one. Havana Shira, Havana Shira, Havana Shira, let us sing. Havana Shira, Havana Shira, Havana Shira, let us sing. Come, let us sing. Come, let us sing. Come, let us sing Havana Shira. Come, let us sing. Come, let us sing. Come, let us sing Havana Shira. Then Josh Nelson wrote this one. Havana Shira, Shir Hallelujah, Shir Hallelujah. 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 So let us all sing. Tonight is going to be a real fun time for me because I grew up in a cantorial home where I listened to lots of cantorial records. Of course, some of my favorites with Yossele Rosenblatt and more Yossele Rosenblatt, and of course Moshe Osher, one of my favorites. Just love these, and Richard Tucker, who was not only a great opera singer but a wonderful Hazzan, a cantor as well. And I would listen to all these albums. That's what made music for me. Obviously, listening to my father, and coming from generations of cantors from Lithuania, this was my world. And occasionally, I would listen to some of my sister's albums. Good old Simon and Garfunkel, which also had my soft spot for folk music. But then something happened. My dad was serving Congregation Temple Israel in Winfield when he invited what he called the hippie rabbi for a concert. And who was this hippie rabbi but no other than Shlomo Carlebach. And I was, 7, 8 years old. I wore this album out okay? You can see by the taping along the sides. I went to the concert, and I'll tell you, it was really an epiphany for me, because I had really only heard cantorial music most of my life, and then listening to what Rabbi Shlomo did was really, it was folk music, but it was really an American style of folk music, and he was able to capture some of the essence from Chassidic music, from the 200-year history of Chassidic music, and really bring it into a relevant space in the synagogue where, I remember the first time I ever heard Psalm 121, Esainai, it was Carlebach's. Esainai el harim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Esainai el harim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Hashem ose shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Hashem ose shamayim va'aretz. And I remember in junior congregation, I would lead every now and then Hallel, and I would use Carlebach's Pitchu li Shaarey Zedek Avovam Odeyal Bipart. Oy Pitchu li Shaarey Zedek Avovam Odeyal Zeh Ashar Ladonai Tzadikim Yavovu. Now, Carlebach wrote over 1,000 melodies of prayer. Well, some of them actually got into the Chassidic Song Festival. That was happening in Israel, late 60s through the 80s, actually, and of course, I was a groupie of them too. The Chassidic Song Festival albums would come out. Oh, and that's the next one I want to talk to you about. But when it came to the Chassidic Song Festival, it was really Shlomo Carlebach that broke in as an American singer into the Israeli market of music, because the Chassidic Song Festival were really Chassidic pieces sung by Israeli singers. Little case in point, my third cousin was Aaron Tzvi Propis, who actually in Israel started the Zimriah, and many have attributed that culture of choral music and singing with how Israel became a state with the dancing and the singing. It was just full of life and bringing hope and joy to so many people who were just the pioneers, the chalutzim. And that's kind of where the Chassidic Song Festival really had some of its legs that it started from. Well, the first piece that actually Carlebach got into the Chassidic Song Festival was the Od Yeshma Beyarei Yehuda Ubeichutzot Yerushalayim. Od Yeshma Beyarei Yehuda Ubeichutzot Yerushalayim. Kol sason vekol simcha, kol chatan vekol kahala. Kol sason vekol simcha, kol chatan vekol kahala. Almost every wedding we would sing that. I used to accompany my father at weddings when I was a kid. And then he wrote this next version of Od Shama. Od Yeshama Yarei Yehuda Ubechutzot Yerushalayim. כל ששון וכל שמחה, כל חתן וכל כלה, כל ששון וכל שמחה, כל חתן וכל כלה. It's got Freilich written. I'm dripping of Freilich when I listen to Od Yeshama. So Carlebach had such an incredible effect on me. I would call that kind of like part one of that epiphany of what changed and molded how I saw Jewish music, and especially coming from an American Jewish perspective. Well, the Chassidic Song Festival was amazing because a lot of the music that came out of that festival still is sung today in synagogues around the world. If you think of the Tzvika Pick, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, right? Everybody remembers that. Or even Kabbalat Shabbat with Reuven Sorotkin's Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena Ladonai, Lechu Neranena. They all got their start from the Chassidic Song Festival, and we still use them today. I remember the Rabbi's Sons. It was a great album. They had put one into the Chassidic Song Festival, which I still use in Hallel today for a very different version of Pitchuli, which was Pitchuli, Shaarey, Zedek, Avo Avovam, Odeya, Pitchuli, Shaarey, Zedek, Avovam, Odeya, Ze Hashal Adonai, Tzadikim Yavo. And probably one of the most famous pieces that actually came out of the Chassidic Song Festival was written in 1967, really on the first few years of the Chassidic Song Festival, by Nurit Hirsch, an unknown composer in Israel, but it became one of the biggest hits, especially after the Six-Day War, and all of you know it. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. So, believe it or not, sometimes when we ask people, how old is that Oseh Shalom, people will say, oh, it's 100, 200 years old. Well, a lot of times when we don't know who wrote something, you usually put anonymous. In Jewish musical terms, we call that a Misinai tune. What's a real Misinai tune? It's so old that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was walking down the Mount Sinai, he was humming that tune. That's how old that piece was. That's why we call it a Misinai tune. Well, we know better. We know that Nurit Hirsch wrote that for the 67 Chassidic Song Festival, and she won first prize for it. And there were other incredible pieces that I only have an hour to cover, but let me put it this way. The contributions of the Chassidic Song Festival to modern Jewish liturgical music and Israeli music by far was one of the greatest contributions, and we still sing them today. That was part of my part one of the Epiphany, and that took me from the 60s and 70s. But then in the 80s, when I finally had my first pulpit in 1983 at Congregation B'rith Shalom in Houston, Texas. Right before I started High Holidays, I was told that it would be a good idea for me to go to the CAJE conference. CAJE stands for the Coalition on Alternatives in Jewish Education. It happened to be at Trinity University in San Antonio. So San Antonio was only a couple hundred miles away from Houston. So got in my car, threw my guitar in the trunk, and I drove to San Antonio. And boy, was I amazed. This was such an incredible plethora of Jewish educational material. But then the evening, the concerts, they were amazing. When you talk about Epiphany, my goodness, I'm seeing for the first time Jewish music by American musicians, American Jewish folk singers, and they were amazing. We're talking about people like Debbie Friedman, Olav HaShalom. It's actually tomorrow is her 11th yahrzeit, and I want to do something special for Debbie's yahrzeit because we had an incredible relationship. But that night, I saw Debbie for the first time, Craig Taubman for the first time, Kol B'Seder, which was Jeff Klepper and Rabbi Debbie Friedlander, and they were amazing. And there were thousands of people in the audience. It was just one of those incredible events. Well, later on that night, we were all kind of hanging out in the student union building, and I heard some guitar playing. So it was about 11, 12 o'clock at night. Went to my car, took my guitar, figured, let me see who's playing. I'll jam with them, see what I could learn. Turns out it was Debbie Friedman, Craig Taubman, Jeff Klepper, and Danny Freelander. They were all sitting around, just facing each other. Three out of the four guitarists, and they're just going along, singing a lot of fun stuff, folk songs, and mostly I think Simon and Garfunkel. So I asked if I could just join them, and they said sure. They were very welcoming and very warm. And that evening, my goodness, we jammed till 5 a.m, and it was one of those nights where time stood still. I honestly say that, and that was a true epiphany for me. That was an unbelievable evening. During that time, I remember Debbie was working on a new piece, and she needed part of the B part of it. You may have heard this before. Ose shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. And then we were working on the B part with her, came up with this. Oseh shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Just amazing music. And there was one time, many times Debbie would come to Houston, because before I was cantor at Congregation Beth Yeshurun, which I followed after 11 years of Bris Shalom, she was the music director, the music teacher in the school of the Beth Hayeled and the schools, and she would come back for weddings and concerts, and we had a wonderful relationship. When I would go out to California to do concerts, she would come to hear me, and we did this one wedding together. It was just so much fun. And we did her wedding vows. And you very rarely hear Debbie Friedman's wedding vows. And it was written kind of like in a round, but I'll sing both A and B parts for you. And it was just magic singing with her. I'll never forget it. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Amo Yisrael al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. That's the A part. B part goes like this. Harei atah mekudeshet li betabat zo kedat Moshe ve'Yisrael. Such a gifted composer. So after we did that, we had sung many of other tunes. She was invited to another wedding in Houston, and I was going to be part of that wedding as well. And where the family wanted me to put together a string quartet for some of the other music that I would sing during the ceremony, as well as with Debbie. Debbie calls me on the Friday before the wedding. He says, "David, I made a major mistake. He said, what's the matter, Debbie? He says, I double booked. I have this major concert on Sunday. I can't make it to the wedding. I promised them I would write a special piece for the wedding. I only wrote half of it. It's a ZOD. It's for them circling. This is the first part I came up with. Okay, and she's on the phone with me. She's at the airport with her guitar. She's singing this into her phone. She's singing ZOD Zedek. This is my beloved, my friend, Zedodi, Zedek. This is my beloved, my friend. And that's what she sings. She says, but it needs a B part, and I don't have time to write it. So David, could you write it and then sing it for them? Just tell them I'm really sorry I can't be there, but I got to catch a plane. Goodbye, click. And that's it. While she was playing, I was writing some chicken scratches down on the newspaper, and I tried to figure out what to do. So I basically wrote a B part. It would go, my beloved, my friend. Here's the B part. Z-O-D, V-O-D. I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine. Z-O-D, Z-A. This is my beloved, my friend. And it's short. It's about a minute and a half long, perfect for the 7 circles around the groom or the bride or both. The problem was I had to rewrite it so it would be for a string quartet as well as guitar. We never got a chance to sing it together. Hopefully I want to publish that so that, but in her memory, and she lives on. You know, great music and great composers live on. And Debbie, I know you're listening, and we miss you. We miss you terribly. And your contribution was really immeasurable to the American Jewish folk singer music scene. We sing your Mishaberach almost every Shabbos. And I do want to share one other little story. My elder sister, Yonina, who passed away 2003 of lymphoma, she was also a big Debbie Friedman fan. And she was going to go to a concert at Beth Shalom Congregation in Elkins Park, where she was performing. And she was so excited about it. So I wanted to surprise her. So I called Debbie up and asked, I know you don't take requests and things, but I told her about my sister's situation. She's been battling cancer for a few years. And if she would sing the Mishaberach, but kind of think of her. And that's all. After the concert, my sister Yonina of blessed memory, she calls and said, David, you won't believe what happened. At the Debbie Friedman concert, she was amazing. But then when she started doing her Mishaberach, she started walking down the aisle. She knew exactly where I was sitting, and she sang it to me. And I started crying. She started crying, and it lit up her face, and it was just such a mitzvah. And it shows what the power of music and a gutta neshama can do. So I'm eternally grateful to what Debbie did for me, for my sister, and for what she's done for Klal Yisrael. So I just want to take that moment. There was another person around that foursome. I'm going to talk about all 4 of them because they all really had an amazing contribution. I don't think enough has been said about Craig Taubman. Craig is a good friend. Craig has written amazing music for the synagogue, for especially the Jewish camps, for Camp Ramah. I'm a Ramanik. I went to Camp Ramah in the Poconos in the 70s, early 70s. And I remember when Craig came into the scene, he wrote some beautiful things. I would kind of start off Kabbalat Shabbat sometimes with his Shir Hamalot. And go שיר המעלות בשוב אדוני את שיבת ציון היינו כחולמים שבת שלום Shabbat Shalom. It's another round, just a beautiful melody. And of course, in my, it was funny when I started what is now known as TGIS. It was originally Thank God It's Shabbat, the Friday night service with band. It started out as it was called Friday Night Alive, because I wanted to call it Friday Night Live, but Craig actually started that as Sinai, and it was also right after the BJ, B'nai Jeshurun service in New York, was catching on. So for the new millennium, Erev Millennia, we premiered this service, and it attracted like 1,700 people at the Congregation Beth Yeshurun from you name it, people in tuxedos ready to paint the town for New Year's Eve, to those just coming to shul and everyone in between. And I remember I picked Craig's Hashkivenu. It's a beautiful, also a round, but everybody, it's very easy to sing. It's Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu malkeinu lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu malkeinu lechaim. Beautiful song, and the melody too. A great prayer. He also wrote many others. We would conclude that service with his Beyado, the last line of Adon Olam. Beyado afti druchi ve'eti shan ve'ayra ve'im ruchi geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira ve'im ruchi geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira. Then we would put English in. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear, safely in your hands. Draw me near, I shall not fear, safely in your hands. A beautiful melody. And recently he wrote a Lador Vador setting. I think I just did it this past Shabbos in Musaf. It's beautiful. Lador Vador Nagid Godlecha Lador Vador Nagid Godlecha Ulenetzach Netzachim Kedushatcha Nagdish. Just a beautiful melody, very singable, great melody line to it. And again, he's written so many more. And then the other two that were sitting around that circle was Jeff Klepper and Dan Freelander. They made up the group called Kol B'Seder. And I think they just had their 25th or 35th anniversary concert tour. They're still singing. I remember being in a service with Rabbi Danny, I think 2 years ago at Boca at my friend Cantor Lori Brock's synagogue, Bethel in Boca. Just an amazing talent. I would always start Sunday mornings in religious school with their Modeh Ani. It was just a staple. Modeh Ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam שחזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך And who could forget לא עליך המלאכה לגמור לא עליך לגמור לא עליך המלאכה לגמור Lo alecha ligmor. It comes from Pirkei Avot. They had so many. Oh my gosh, their biggest hit, which we still do on Friday nights every now and then. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki Ata Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Ki Ata Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. And gosh, they even wrote an Oseh Shalom that was quite popular. Let's see. Oseh Shalom, Shalom bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'akol Yisrael, Ve'imeru Amen. Kol B'Seder, they are such talented guys. They've written so many more pieces. Between the four, Craig Taubman, Debbie Friedman, Jeff Klepper, Dan Friedlander, they really created part of that second part of an epiphany for me, and there were many other groups during that time. Another favorite of mine was Safam. Safam, by the way, in Hebrew is a mustache. A mustache in Hebrew is called Safam. And it was made up by five incredible singers, two of which were cantors, one dear friend of mine, Rabbi Solomon, and Rabbi's big breakout hit was the song Leaving Mother Russia. If you remember back in the Soviet Jewry movement days, this was it was just great. And we are leaving Mother Russia. We have waited far too long. We are leaving Mother Russia. When they come for us, we'll be gone. And I remember Mary Travers from Peter, Paul, and Mary was in concert in Houston at a different synagogue. And I remember going to the concert, and then afterwards being invited back to the green room and meeting her. And she was wondering if I knew anything about the Soviet Jewry movement and what it was. And I explained to her what I knew. And I also said, are you familiar with Rabbi Solomon's song, Leaving Mother Russia? And she said, no. So I had the chutzpah to say, here, let me play it for you. And I took Mary Travers' guitar, and I just started playing Leaving Mother Russia. And she loved it. I sent her the music. I sent her Rabbi's contact info. And wouldn't you know it, she started singing that in a lot of her concerts. And Safam, golly, they wrote so many pieces. Still today, Hanukkah for me, without their Al Hanisim, is not Hanukkah. I sing it in the show all the time. Al Hanisim ve'al Purkan ve'al Gvorot ve'al Teshuvot ve'al Milchamot she'asita lavoteinu. Bayamim mahem, bayamim mahem, bayamim mahem, bayamim mahem, bayamim mahem, bazman hazeh, bazman hazeh. You remember that? And then, gosh, there was another, so many great pieces. They actually wrote a full Hallel service. Their Birkat, the Birkat Hallel, I actually do with my choir. And on Shabbos, their Yismechu. Oh gosh, it's just it was written for duet with choir, but let me see if I can do it in a solo version. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei Shvi מקדשי שביעי שבת כולם ישבעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת ישמחו למלכותך ישמחו למלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג עונג שבת. And then Robbie actually wrote a chazanah's part for the middle part there. Say verei shitis mechur malchutecha ismechur malchutecha shomrei shabbat vekorei oneg oneg shabbat. Maybe I'll do it this Shabbos. Why not? So Safam, gosh, they made an incredible impression on me, and this was from the 80s through the 90s. And then all of a sudden, I hear about Danny Massing. Now, Danny, my goodness, what a talent. He grew up in Israel. He was an Israeli actor, singer, musician, songwriter, composer. He was a multi-tool player, let me put it that way. And I remember going to a concert of his. It was called Souls on Fire. And it's the first time I ever heard any of his music, and it just moved me. The melody lines that he would write were just so brilliant. When we begin our Shabbos morning services, I use his Matovu, which is a beautiful setting. It goes like this. Matovu, Matovu. Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Matovu. It's just a beautiful setting. And then actually, I've included his Elohai Nitzor of late, which bookends the beginning. Well, actually, Elohai Nitzor finishes the Amida with just an amazing sense of inspiration when you're talking about, oh God, keep my tongue from evil and my lips from speaking lies. It's just a beautiful piece. It goes like this. Elohai netzor lishoni mera ושפתיי מדבר מרמה ולמכה לי נפשי תדום ונפשי כי יפה לכל תהיה Elohai Elohai. And it usually continues in Hebrew, but I added the English so more people would understand the prayer. Oh God, keep my tongue from evil and my lips from speaking lies. Help me to ignore those who slander me. Let me be humble before all. Before all. Ptach libi. Open my heart to your Torah. Ptach libi betoratecha. Elohai netzor lishoni mera, and so on and so forth. Just a beautiful, beautiful setting. You know, and that took me to 2 decades worth of incredible music that American Jewish songwriters and folk singers contributed to my repertoire, to our tapestry of repertoire of conservative and reform synagogues all over the country. And then came my part three, a third epiphany, when I started listening to how things were changing. And there came upon Camp Ramah a new song leader, unheard of before. Well, that was Rick Recht. And we had Rick Recht to our synagogue for many concerts. Rick was really amazing. He was the epitome of the American Jewish folk singer, and he could connect with the kids. He could connect with adults, all on the same platform. And we begin our religious school Sunday mornings with his Hinei Ma Tov. It's beautiful. Hinei Ma Tov U'Manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. 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 Just beautiful in its simplicity and its message. You can't help but smile when you sing it. He's done so much, and I think the biggest contributions he has actually made was he created Jewish rock radio. You know, for years I always asked, why has there not been a category of Jewish music at the Grammys? And I've asked this question for 40 years, and no one has given me an answer. So those of you who are out there in cyberspace, maybe you can help get that as a category to the Grammys of Jewish music. It's about time. Or in Yiddish they say, schon Zeit. It's time. But he created Jewish rock radio. And Jewish rock radio spawned an incredible number of newly minted Jewish American folk singers that will boggle your mind. There are dozens, literally dozens, that are just amazing in what they have written. And believe it or not, Rick took an old Shlomo Carlebach, the Kiva Moed. Kiva Moed, Kiva Moed. That's originally from Carlebach, and Rick gave it a whole new feel. While we're on the subject of Carlebach, I have to mention Neshama Carlebach. Neshama, my goodness, what a talent. She's had a tough time to be in the shadow of her father, who was larger than life. And even in his death, he was larger in death than in life. There are synagogues that are called the Carlebach Synagogue now that only do his music. Well, Neshama had to bridge that gap and deal with a lot of things. She was a great folk singer in her own right. But once she started embracing what her father did and revamped, kind of like the king's new clothing, Neshama deserves a major kudos and a spot in that evolution. A few years ago, I did an incredible album. I had the honor to do an album with my dear friend and colleague, Hazzan David Propis. The album was called Together as One. And we talked about what we wanted on there. And at the time, Neshama was really prominent. And, we started thinking of what songs that she had redone reminded us of her father. And we came up with a medley, and we called it Neshama's Neshama, Neshama's Soul. And that was really her father. And we kind of mashed a few of these great pieces together, and it would start with prayers in the Musaf service, the Hu Eloheinu, going to the Friday night Vishamru, and then Virshleim Ircha. Goes something like this. Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Vehu Yashmienu, Berachamav Shenit, Shenit Layene Kol Chai, Shenit, Shenit Layene Kol Chai, Liot Lachem Lelohim, B'shameru V'nei Yisrael Et HaShabbat La'asot Et HaShabbat L'dorotam Berit Olam Ay, 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 Beini Uvein B'nai Yisrael Odi Le'olam Ki Sheishet Yamim Asa Adonai Et HaShamayim Ve'et ha'aretz Uvayom ha'shvi'i Shabbat va'inafash. I miss singing with you, Elisa. Uvayom ha'shvi'i Shabbat va'inafash. Yendanai, 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 nanai, 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 yendanai, 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 nanai. Berishalayim mircha, oy berachamim tashu v'tishkon betocha, kasher dibarta. Uvanei ota bekarav benyameinu binyan olam. Uvanei ota bekarav benyameinu binyan olam. V'chisei David avdecha, oy meheira letocha tochin. V'chisei David avdecha, oy meheira lechecha tochin. Yendanai, 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 yendanai. So much fun. So much fun. So, it's when you have good music, it lasts. It really lasts. And some of the newer singers that are on the scene are also equally great. There's a movement out of New York. It's called HADAR, and some incredible musicians from there. Case in point, Deborah Sachs-Mintz. She's a rabbinical student at JTS. She's part of the HADAR faculty and has sung a lot with Rabbi Josh Warshawsky, who we'll get to in just a minute. But I've introduced her L'Chadodi to our TGIS service. Just a haunting melody that once it gets in your head, you can't get it out of your head. Oy. It goes like this. L'Chadodi Nikerat kala Penei Shabbat Nekavela L'Chadodi Nikerat kala Penei Shabbat Nekavela Shamo v'zachor V'dibur echad Ishmi'anu El hamiuchad Adonai echad You see what I'm talking about? It's like magnetic. And she's done lots of other pieces. And I mentioned Rabbi Josh Warshawsky, just a great talent. He got his smicha from the Ziegler School a few years ago, has been writing music, has been touring all over the country, especially with incredible fiddle player, Colleen Decker, and he's written many pieces. He'll be actually here with us for a whole Shabbaton weekend in the last weekend of March. So if you're in the Michigan area, and those of us at Shaarey Zedek, we're going to be treated to Rabbi Josh's music. And I'm actually going to introduce some of them for the next few TGIS services on Friday night, which is a plug. This Friday night, it's first Friday of every month, 6 p.m. in the sanctuary of Congregation Shaarey Zedek. But one goes, it's called Hame'ira. And it goes like this. Darim aleha berachamim Hameira Hameira le'aretz Veladarim aleha Veladarim aleha Veladarim aleha berachamim Uvtuvo מחדשת מעשה בראשית. Let me try that one more time. מעשה ביחדך בכל יום תמיד. This meditative chant that becomes more, I remember Shefa Gold, Rabbi Shefa Gold began using a lot of these mantra-esque melodies, and they're really just wonderfully motivating. And he also wrote a great L'chadodi that we also introduced to our services. It's great. Let me see. It goes. Hamdididam lechadodi, hamdididam likatala, hamdididam penny Shabbat nekabela, hamdididam lechadodi, hamdididam penny Shabbat, hamdididam likatala, likravela, lecha dodi dodi, lecha dodi likatala, penny Shabbat Shabbat, penny Shabbat nekabela. שמוע וזכור בדיבור אחד ישמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד הוא שמו אחד לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. And all the verses afterwards, you can see we're in pretty good hands when it comes to American Jewish folk music. Thank you for joining me this evening. I just had a great time. I see the time is kind of running out. Before we end, where as we finish every Fireside Chants, I finish off with a song called "You'll Never Walk Alone." But before we do that, I just wanted to I know there's some things in the chat. Kelly, are there any questions that I could maybe address before we end tonight?
Well, Levi Smith had a couple of questions. Has Orthodoxy accepted Debbie Friedman's words and melodies?
That's a great question. I would say mostly not. However, I don't think they're aware that they were Debbie Friedman compositions. And a case in point, I remember when we were in Poland and we were doing a Havdalah service with the chief rabbi of Poland and the chief rabbi of Krakow. And, the chief rabbi of Krakow had a shtreimel on. The chief rabbi of Poland, forgot his name, his brother is actually a cantor and a member of the Cantors Assembly. We got along wonderfully. But they said, oh, no, we want to start Havdalah. And what do they start with? They start with Debbie's Havdalah. And this is Orthodox rabbis, and I doubt they even knew that it was written by Debbie Friedman. So to answer your question, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure. I don't even, and if they do, I don't think they even know that those compositions were by Debbie Friedman.
Leon shared what her Havdalah sang all over the world.
Okay.
Thank you, Leon. Her Havdalah is sung all over the world, and that's true. It's one of the greatest compositions.
Daddy and Don Wagner would like you to know this was more enjoyable than going to the Naples Philharmonic.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a great compliment. We have a lot to be proud of in Jewish music, especially what American Jewish music composers have brought to the synagogue, to our camps, and to our lives. I guess with that, it's time to close, and I just wanted to thank everybody. We're going to have 2 more Fireside Chants during the winter because I see snow out there. I don't know about you, but this fireplace is nice and toasty right now. I've got toasted buns, but we're not going to get there. We're going to have 2 more Fireside Chants, one in February, I think February 9th, where I may want to start exploring some of the contributions that cantors who are composers have really painted a whole new tapestry of music for the American Nusach music scene that we have done, specifically highlighting my dear friend and colleague Meir Finkelstein, and a long-time friend, and I'm a big admirer of Saul Zim, and many others. So stick around for that in February and March. We'll also do another Fireside Chants. So without any further ado, I just want to just make sure you always know that we are with you. We're here to help, and allow music to fill your souls and fill that void, because music is happiness. And without happiness, we have COVID. So let's better to be happy. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk Sa'enai el heharim me'ayin yavu ezri. Sa'enai el heharim me'ayin yavu ezri. Ezri me'im Hashem oseh shamayim va'aretz. Shalom bimromav yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Stay warm, stay healthy, and then let's hope this 2022 year is one filled with joy, with simcha, and with sweetness, and smiles and laughter. See you next time.